My name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Innovation Showcase. The main purpose of this ongoing series is to inform viewers about exciting innovations and creative individuals across the fields of business, science, technology, education, and the arts. Today, via Zoom, we're fortunate to have as our guest Sam Holland. Sam is a product design engineer and entrepreneur. Together with Nate Padgett, Sam co-founded Informal, which is a collective that connects independent professionals in hardware and hard tech with startups and entrepreneurs. Informal offers services ranging from product design and engineering to manufacturing and branding, and provides a platform for freelancers to collaborate on meaningful hardware projects. As we'll soon hear, Sam is also the inventor of the donut holder, a whimsical yet functional Munchkin dispenser that can clip to your belt. Let's start by meeting Sam and then learning what both Informal and the donut holder can teach us about inventing, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Welcome, Sam. So delighted you're able to be here.
Thank you for having me.
Like so many others, first hearing about the donut holder brought a smile to my face. The backstory is fabulous. Eager to hear more about that and have you inform viewers about both the product and also the initiative Informal. But before we jump right to that, I think it would be of interest if you'd share maybe just a little bit more about your background, professional interest, and what your current position is.
Sure. Yeah, I'm a product design engineer. So that's a type of mechanical engineer who specializes in high volume mass manufacturing. I typically work on things like consumer electronics devices. I've done monitoring devices. Pretty much everything back here is I've had in designing. Comes in handy for calls like this. I started my career working on 3D printers, moved over to live streaming video cameras, and then co-founded Informal and have been doing freelance and consulting work for about 8 years now.
Mm.
So yeah, I get to work on a variety of projects, mostly working with factories in China on how do we make the thing. So people come to us with ideas, and my job is to make it into something that is inexpensive and robustly manufactured.
Well, one thing that, as I mentioned, has gotten a lot of attention, so much fun, but so much to learn from is the donut holder. For those who haven't had the good fortune to hear about it yet, could you share what it is and how the idea from it came about?
Sure, yeah. The donut holder started in 2020 during COVID, like a lot of crazy ideas. We were working with a client on a product called Burrito Pop, and this holds a burrito and you put it in and twist it and raises and lowers. And I was fascinated with the amount of engineering work and design work that went into something that's fundamentally silly, right? Brought a smile to people's face and started playing around with other concepts. Work dried up during COVID as people weren't sure what to do next. And so I had some free time. And in order to not go crazy, I started working on this dispenser. And this is the first one I made. It's 3D printed. It holds some donuts and you press the button and it drops out. And I put it off to the side. It was funny and didn't think about it for, 5 years. Recently started thinking about it again and dusted it off. Literally, it was dusty, and started iterating on it and refining and creating a better and better version of a Munchkin holder, which is a problem that no one actually has, right? So the way this works is you load it with Munchkins and you press a button and it dispenses one at a time into your hand. And I've been refining and tweaking and iterating on this for over 20 versions now, and I think I've almost cracked the code.
Wow. What have been some of the major challenges during the prototyping process?
Yeah, I can actually show you. So my favorite donut is a butternut. I have 3 here. The first problem I ran into is actually getting them to stay in, and then when you press the button, only having one come out. You can see it all falling out. So I spent a lot of time on something I'm calling the drop stopper, which is a system to prevent donuts from falling out. Sounds obvious, sounds easy. It's taken way more of my time than I anticipated. And it's this series of levers that oh, that one actually didn't work. But it holds the next donut in place and then allows it to fall and drop out.
Oh
So
yeah.
not a problem that anyone's ever had before until now. But spending a lot of time on mechanism design, refining this so it can be mass manufactured. The other fun thing I've discovered is glazed donuts and round donuts are very different.
Mm.
So these are lighter, these are different shapes, whereas these round donuts are more consistent. And so there's actual work being done on what's the optimal size of the holder for capturing the most types of donuts. I have measured over 40 donuts now. I have calipers, and my poor wife, I'll buy a box of donuts and say, you can't eat them yet, I need to measure them. And I have a whole Google sheet of all the dimensions and the types and categorizing them to figure out what's the average size. So putting some actual like statistics and engineering work into this has been really fun.
Well, related to that, a wonderful job that you've done throughout this process is chronicle it online. Fantastic series of blogs and other information, some of it that you just mentioned, that take us through the whole design process and how you go from an idea to a product that perhaps one day will be on market.
Yeah, this is something we've been doing with my company Informal as well, which is creating a lot of resources for folks who are new to hardware and they want to understand, there's a million acronyms in the hardware world. So what do these mean? Or how long does it take to go from an idea to a prototype and a prototype to manufactured units? What is injection molding? Why do I have to do this? Why do we make things in China? We write all these guides out. And part of this process with the donut holder was me trying to chronicle from concept all the way to a unit in hand, the behind the scenes work. A lot of clients don't want to share that it took 20 design iterations, or I'm having trouble with this, or this is really hard to do, right? People just want to show the successes. So it's been really fun to kind of peek behind the curtain and say, this takes a lot of work, and show it off. So every couple of weeks when I have free time, I try and write up what I've been doing, what I'm doing next, some of the challenges I've run into. It's been a lot of fun. It's kind of like journaling.
Can you share a little bit about the campaign that you started with Duncan?
Sure. I created a Squarespace page. This is my first time learning a lot of the marketing side and the engineering side, aside from the engineering side. So, professionally, I create products for people and they come to me with an idea. This is my first time zooming back a bit and saying, I have the idea. How do I tell people about it? So I built this website on Squarespace and played around with it, shared it with friends and family until they all were like, this is pretty funny. And then I went on LinkedIn and I actually put it up on LinkedIn, which is my social media platform of choice. I don't have a very strong Instagram following or Facebook or anything like that. But due to the nature of how we work for Informal, I have a decent following on LinkedIn and it went viral. I posted it, 140,000 impressions and like 40 reshares and huge comment streams, and people were really energized by it. They really liked it. And I think part of it was the shock factor of launching something on LinkedIn versus a traditional platform.
Mhm.
So the website was really fun. People were spending a lot of time reading through everything I wrote on there. I can share some images of the website with you. And
Please.
yeah, the pitch was, I would like to trade this idea to Dunkin' Donuts for a pontoon boat, which was obviously silly, but it also helped cut through the static of everyone yelling into the void, which happens online. I also like to think that being LinkedIn famous is similar to being like the cool kid in band camp, where it means a lot to a little amount of people, but when I went on Instagram and tried to talk about this, just fell silent. So I chose the right avenue, I think, for launching, which was really, really fun and non-traditional.
What's next for the donut holder before we move on?
Yeah, I am doing a lot of work on it. I'm actually filing a design and utility patent right now.
Hmm.
I've been speaking with agencies who want us to do similar work with other brands, which is exciting. I am building a Munchkin measurement device to help me gather even more data on Munchkins for some reason. And I'm working on iterations left and right to try and solve, as I showed you, that these two different types, how to make both of these support and dispense properly. So working on all that, I'm also designing it for mass manufacturing using my capabilities, my experience as an engineer, and getting quotes for manufacturing. So there's a world in which we make this and sell it ourselves. There's a world in which we sell the idea to a vendor, or we may find something in between where we license it out. But it's been really fun and a creative way to use my brain instead of a typical engineering brain.
Very creative indeed. Well, speaking of your brain or yourself, what have you learned about yourself, about inventing, about business from this personal approach, having had many years collaborating with other clients?
Yeah, I have found I am really bad at social media. That was the first realization was, as I said, screaming into the void. Um, and it's really hard just because you have an idea, you think it's a good idea. It's incredibly hard to get people to see your thing and resonate with it. So the marketing work that goes into it, the website design, there's a lot of effort that goes in, aside from designing and engineering something as meticulously as you can. So it's been really eye-opening to understand that side of the business. I also, since I'm designing it, I am refining it and tweaking it, and there's this long tail of, adjusting a millimeter here, a millimeter there. When I'm doing this for a client, I usually put up my hands and I say, I think it's good enough. If
Mm.
you're the client, if you're like designing it for yourself, it's really hard to say, you need to stop. You need to do something else with your life. So it's always that balance of like, I can make it better, I can change it, but realizing what is good enough. So I'm getting exposure to patenting, to branding, to website design. It's been really, really exciting to see all the other groups that come together to make a product launch successful.
As I mentioned in the introduction, what first brought me to find out about you was the donut holder. But learning about Informal, I found incredibly fascinating, and what's involved with that uh, couldn't be a better topic or example for this series, Innovation Showcase. Can you share how the company Informal came about, the inspiration, and how it's developed up to now?
Sure, yeah. Informal is a 7-year-old company, and it was founded by myself and my co-founder, Nate. We were both living in New York City at the time in Brooklyn, and I wanted to teach a course about 3D modeling and found this makerspace down the road. And I sent him an email, and Nate was working at the makerspace, and he called me and we had a conversation. Our first conversation was about how do we teach this class about 3D modeling and design to folks.
Hmm.
And we talked about that for, I would say, 10 minutes, switched over to our love of freelance and consulting, and we talked about that for an hour. We met up that evening, we grabbed a coffee, and that night, Nate founded the website. He created the company. So it was just
Wow.
this like immediate, we both loved what we're doing here. He's more marketing and branding, I'm more engineering. And our idea was, what if we pitched companies together? And how do we create this community? How do we then tap our friends and say, hey, do you want to do engineering work with us? And so we've grown to this network of over 400 people who we vetted, we know, and we can tackle large projects by choosing the right people at the right time, working together as a team. And it's been amazing. It's been growing ever since. Um, I like to say we're doing all the things that are difficult or hard or they suck about freelancing and consulting, right? So when you're on your own, you are your business development person, you are your marketer, you're also your finance team, you're an administrator, you have legal documents, but all you want to do is the work. So
Mm.
all that other stuff is the things you have to do. And we do that for freelancers and consultants. So we handle invoicing, time tracking, payroll, legal documents, finding teams, building all this community so that really talented folks, all they have to do is just the work.
That's fabulous.
Yeah, it's and it's funny because that's my least favorite part, and I do it for everybody else now.
I know you have a couple of images that help provide some additional
Yes.
explanation of what Informal offers and how you go about matching startups with entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so this actually is an example of one product we worked on for a brain scanning headset. Um, but yeah, we have a collection of freelancers, and as I mentioned, business development, legal, scoping, all of these things are things you have to do aside from being a freelancer. And that's stopping you from just being good at your one job, your freelancing job. So it's really hard to do all this. And then for clients and companies, we have this network. So we always have the right person available. We
Mm.
recently built a team of an augmented reality team with like the best augmented reality mechanical engineer and electrical engineer
Wow.
because this network's so strong. Typical firms and agencies don't usually do that. They bring you the next person who's not busy yet, right? So we
Mm.
have this superpower of a remote network of amazing people we can grab and mix and match with.
How did you go about selecting and then vetting these individuals?
That is one of the hardest parts. Previously, we were open door. We were letting people in, and it's really hard to maintain a high level of quality and trust. We've recently, we're at 400, and Nate and I know each and every person through one or 2 degrees of separation, and
Mm.
the network has grown through mostly referrals. So my buddy who's an electrical engineer says, you need to talk to this firm or developer. And that's the kind of connections that we really value and prioritize when we grow the network are these excellent referrals. And so we put people on smaller engagements, we test them out, we understand their working style, their client communication, how fast they work, how efficiently they work, right? These are all different variables, and help try and find the right projects for them as well. So certain clients don't know what they're doing and they need somebody to help kind of get in the weeds with them and sort it out. Other people say, I need to know exactly what I'm doing and I'm really good at that, right? And so part of our job is figuring out where on that spectrum do you lie and what does the client need and what do you work best as a team member or individually. So there's a lot of stuff that goes in behind the scenes on matchmaking.
Speaking of matching, what are some of the gaps in the traditional developmental product process that you're trying to smooth over with Informal and all the wonderful freelancers and connections you have available?
Yeah, so if you're an entrepreneur and you're self-funded, typically you have an idea, you write it down on paper, and then you look around for maybe an industrial design firm. And these firms are excellent at creating the outside shapes of the product, beautiful images and videos. Um, that's kind of their bread and butter, right? They are not as good at engineering. So then you find an engineering firm, and they're really good at engineering, not at design. So now you're kind of passing files back and forth, and you have these two companies that have similar but different interests, and they're trying to work together. And then you do this again with marketing. And then you do this again with building a website, right? So there's all these different teams you have to either hire yourself as full-time members or find agencies to work with. What we're trying to do is bring all that in-house. So as I mentioned, 400 people, that spans electrical, firmware,
Hmm.
supply chain, branding, marketing, all these different roles. We can move with the customer throughout that process and bring people back into play when needed, keep them in the loop so there's no information lost, and try and keep costs down because we don't have a ton of overhead compared to a firm. This is my
Hmm.
basement. I'm in my basement office.
Yeah.
So, and it's a team of 2.5 running, full time here. So um, we're growing, we're learning how this works, but it's really exciting to be able to, for example, on this Bluetooth speaker, I never met the team that I worked with on this product for 2 years. We were on Zoom calls, we were collaborating on Slack, and we were able to build an entire product and a Kickstarter campaign and a website. And I think for far less than if you were to have piecemealed it with a bunch of agencies and tried to manage things. So, and we're learning all the time. There's always new findings and ways to make things better for communication and management and things like that.
That sounds very exciting. You mentioned a couple. Could you give us a sense of the range of companies and products that you've worked with so far or are in the loop now?
Sure, yeah. I personally love working with entrepreneurs, first time hardware founders. And a lot of the products back here actually are from folks like that. So this solar speaker is a really good example. Um, this is a Bluetooth solar powered speaker that the client said, I want to put something that sits outside and recharges. So these are all solar panels on here. Uh,
Fabulous.
and we did the brand, the industrial design, the logo, the website, the crowdfunding campaign, all the engineering work. And we have a factory in China we work with closely who manufactures this. So this is a really good example of like doing the whole thing for a client. Burrito Pop I mentioned is a lot of fun. Burrito Holder, we did their Kickstarter campaign. We've worked on that brain scanning headset, which is right here, and there's monitoring devices for veterinarians. These are the smaller items.
Mm.
We've also helped on electric motorcycles, robots that install solar panels, machines that more efficiently kill fish for food processing,
Ah.
cold plunge tubs. So there's a huge variety, and that's the most exciting part is that exposure to all these different industries as well.
I read and explored a little bit on the website, terrific handbook that you've put together. Can you share a little bit about that? What a resource.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That goes back to my desire to educate folks about hardware. It's a little bit of a closed gate typically. It's you need to learn all the terminology and the timelines. And so we've been my policy has been if I repeat myself 5 times on calls to different clients, I'm going to write it down. And that's how it started. So Nate and I started writing guides of here's what we recommend for going to market. Here's how you create a successful Kickstarter campaign, or here are the different types of 3D printing. Here's how you add a logo to a part. We did different articles for all these things. And eventually we compiled them into a guide. And this is essentially, if you're new to hardware, if you want to learn more, download this handbook and you can learn pretty much everything there is to know about hardware. And it's to help our clients better understand what they're doing, right? It's been a lot of fun. And there's more articles to add. We're always adding new things. It's been really, really exciting. We've created a resource database recently that links to other people's amazing guides, best
Ah.
practices, things like that. So we have manufacturing vendors we recommend, cool podcasts and video series that we recommend, but also, the DuPont Plastics Handbook for how to properly design plastic parts. So very
Mm.
nerdy, intricate things, as well as more heady topics of can we make this product in America versus China?
Mm.
People have really resonated with that as well. So I love making these resources. I think they're a lot of fun and a little different than just making a 3D model of something as well.
No, it's wonderful, wonderful. What advice would you give? And I know the handbook has a lot of that to people who have an idea for maybe a product, not quite a company yet, but a product that they think, oh, the market is ready for this, but I don't know where to go with it or how to
Yeah,
begin even.
I'm learning that myself. I think the best thing I've found is share it with people that you trust who won't just say, yes, that's a good idea, right? So my wife has to say, yes, this is a great idea. My brother does not. Um, and some of my friends as well. So I've found sharing these ideas with people, getting feedback, tweaking your idea based on that, and kind of slowly growing out until you're better understanding what people want. That's really important. A lot of times we talk to people who have a certain idea, and you realize when you talk to them, it's just for them, and that's not a huge market. You need to try and find out who's this for? What problem is this solving? So that's one really important thing. The other thing is these things take a long time to build. A year and a half, 1 year to 1.5 years is a typical, like, I have an idea to I have something in my hand process. And that's shocking for a lot of people, especially in the day and age of instant gratification, like Amazon orders, apps, right? Like these things take a long time. And so helping people understand why that takes so long and why you can't cut corners and shortcut things without it blowing up later. It's all in the guide.
And one thing that you mentioned earlier with the donut holder that resonated with me is the idea that it took up to now even 20 iterations. And I think that's one thing I've picked up talking to inventors like yourself is the need to keep iterating. And I think people who are new to the whole business world or inventing sometimes think they have to have the perfect idea before starting something. But you're a terrific example, both for the donut holder and in Informal, the way you go about working, that that's definitely not the case, and that you learn so much both from yourself and, as you mentioned, through different audiences, getting as much feedback as possible.
Yeah, and exactly. And the iteration process is such a key component of making hardware. Um, Build, test, break, iterate, and it goes on and on. And that is usually hidden from, you see a new product launch and it's perfect and it works. What you don't see is the 2 years of build, test, iterate, break over and over, right? 3D printers are inexpensive. I have 4 right here running. at all times.
Mm.
These are all 3D printed concepts I've been working on. And that's been really powerful to be able to test and iterate in-house. And the biggest difference between hardware and software is you can always push an update on it. You get a new install, like a new app, and you can install the app and you're done, right? You can't push a new trigger to everyone who has one already. And so that's why you have automotive recalls. That's why there's big safety recalls for products, right? So hardware, you need to be ready. You need to be certain before you make thousands of something. You can't fix it later. And that's a very fundamental difference than, pushing something online.
Hmm. Hmm. How do you see Informal evolving over the next few years?
So part of it is these resources, creating more resources, becoming a place where people can learn about the whole process. Part of it is that, this donut holder is an example of something we're trying now, which is kickstarting our own ideas. So we have this network of amazing folks. How can we work with them and bring ideas to life that we've generated instead of clients? So we are testing another product right now, trying to see how far can we get in the market
Mm.
with just our internal teams and brainstorming and iterating together. So that's been really fun, almost creating our own product lines. And then there's also the aspect of these in-place meeting positions that we've created. So my co-founder Nate runs Studio 45 out in the Bay Area. This is like a professional hacker space, maker space. There's
Mm.
laser cutters and CNC machines, 3D printers, electronic stations. This is where small companies, they can go there and build and start their journey there. So there's an in-person aspect. We have this amazing network of engineers and designers who can help build it. Then we also have these meetups that we run around the world. So
Mm.
we're in, I think, 40 cities now in multiple
Wow.
countries.
Mm.
I'm running one soon up here in Vermont, and there are a couple, 70 to 100 people in a room with pizza and beer and sharing ideas. And so there's a community aspect there as well. And it's been really fascinating to see all of these things moving at once. That's been Nate's initiative. He's been amazing at pushing all these things forwards and tying them together into this, like, we're not just creating things for people, but we're making freelancing a full-time career choice, and we're helping these people out and connecting them to the right folks at the right time. So I just see that growing and becoming stronger. Yeah, it's been really, really fun.
Sounds incredibly exciting. Speaking of connecting, how can viewers and others find out more about Informal and, of course, the donut holder, but being in touch with you and the company?
Yes, our website is informal.cc, and my email directly is sam@informal.cc. And then the website for my donut holder is dearduncan.com, which I am amazed was available. And I am changing it and iterating it and tweaking on it all the time. So please sign up for the newsletter and see all the crazy things I'm doing.
Oh, it's really exciting. And Sam, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the program. I want to thank you so much for being here. I mean, the donut holder is lots of fun, as we said, but Informal has so much for all of us to learn about entrepreneurship, the business world, and the way you go about connecting all different individuals. So thank you for your time and informing us about what you're involved with.
Thank you for having me. This has been really fun.
Also want to thank those of you watching for tuning in and hope you'll be able to join us next time.